It is not just any other ransomware. It is the LockBit ransomware.
Bring it on! Bring it on!
LockBit, one of the world's most dangerous ransomware groups, is now back with version 4, and it is smarter, faster, and scarier than ever. This version does not waste time. It hits your files, demands money, and then vanishes, all before you even know what happened. And it doesn't stop there. Russian keyboard, it backs off. English keyboard, you're a toast. So I went deep into the code to find out what makes this ransomware so dangerous and perilous. And also, I found the available tools that you can use to decrypt your files if you ever got hit with this ransomware, or if you know someone who got hit with the ransomware. So let's start with the full breakdown, and trust me, you don't want to miss this.
I wanted to save the world.
Now, let's get into why LockBit ransomware is the most dangerous ransomware in 2025 and maybe in the previous years, because it's highly evasive. It evades detection, monitoring, virtual machines, and many other security measures. So basically, after the malware initiates, it first starts applying the anti-VM and anti-detection tactics. For example, first, the ransomware employs tactics to avoid being detected by security systems, among which is changing the API names. So as you know, guys, Windows APIs are loaded by applications for the functionality. This ransomware loads these APIs in a dynamic fashion to prevent the identification of these APIs, because once you can find out what are the APIs called by a set application, you'll be able to derive its functionality. This ransomware obfuscates the name of the APIs by loading them dynamically. Additionally, it actually manipulates the ETW event write value, which is a value that is or that controls the event tracing for Windows. Basically, event tracing for Windows allows you to log and trace events created by user mode applications and kernel mode drivers. So the LockBit ransomware manipulates this value that controls this mechanism by changing it and disabling it completely. So it disables logging, it changes or manipulates the API names, and of course, it implements a highly hybrid cryptographic mechanism. The ransomware uses a combination of asymmetric and symmetric encryption algorithms. And beside all these tactics, the ransomware evades the decompiling. At least it actually creates hinders and obstacles for analysts who intend to decompile the ransomware. By what? By implementing a tactic that flips stack variables. Instead of the usual negative value, the ransomware flips the stack variables and make them positive. The ransomware alters stack variable offsets to confuse analysis tools. When you, as you know, guys, when you analyze a ransomware or a malware using reverse engineering tools, decompilers, debuggers, we highly rely on stack variables. When stack variables are manipulated and their values are changed, we will have difficulties understanding the sample. That's why this sample, or that's why LockBit ransomware is very evasive. And that's why it is considered as highly dangerous.
What was that? Wait.
So this is a sample, assembly code for the LockBit ransomware. Now here we see clearly that the LockBit malware ransomware flips the stack variables and make them all positive. This is an example here. And we have also this example. So these are examples where we can see clearly that the stack variables are becoming positive. So why this is not good from a decompiling point of view? Because in reverse engineering, positive stack values are used actually as function arguments. Negative values are used for local variables. So when we have everything positive, as you can see here, we confuse the decompiler and we make the decompiler think that these values or these variables are function arguments instead of in fact being local variables. That's why we mess things up when decompiling the sample. We don't get clear results. And that's actually unconventional tactic used by ransomware samples. And now we come to the code portion responsible for disabling the locking mechanism in Windows by manipulating the value of ETW event write. So here, by calling the value or the variable responsible for the logging mechanism, and then assigning the ransomware sample read-write permissions. So here we assign read-write permissions, okay? And then after the read-write permissions are granted, to the sample, the sample proceeds and calls the ZW write virtual memory to change the value of ETW event write to a value that makes it or renders it disabled. And thus, the sample disables the Windows logging. Now it's time to check the ransom note. That's the note that's usually left by the ransomware when it first infects the victim. Before I take a look at the note, I wanted to show you guys the routine that's used to encrypt the note. So the ransomware note is encrypted and decrypted using RC4. Okay, and basically that's the code taken when I first decompiled the ransomware. That's the routine responsible for encrypting and decrypting the ransomware note. And basically, the note, that's the key that the ransomware uses to encrypt and decrypt the note. And more importantly, that's the note. So when first infects the victim, the note says or states, "You have been attacked by LockBit, the fastest, most stable, and immortal ransomware since 2019. You must pay us." And also it includes the Tor links where you can check your information. So this means that if you do not pay the ransom, the information and the files will be published on these Tor sites. So when you open these Tor sites, they claim that you will find your information exposed if you do not pay. And they also included the web access key that you can use to get access to the page. That's a Tor page, or that's an onion page. As you can see, it ends with .onion, which means you cannot access this page through the regular web. You're going to have to use the Tor browser, connect to the Onion network, and then you can then copy and paste the link through your browser. So once you copy or once you open the link, it will ask you for the access key. You will put the access key and you will find if or whether your information was or has been published. Okay, we go on. What is the guarantee that we do not scam you? Here they are telling you that they are the oldest gang that produce and manufacture ransomwares, and they care for their reputation. That's why they will not scam you. So once you pay the ransom, they claim that you will get your files back. Warning: do not delete or modify encrypted files. It will lead to irreversible problems with decryption of files. And also, they said that do not go to the police or the FBI for help, and do not tell anyone that we attacked you.
I don't understand.
That's hilarious. When buying Bitcoin, here they tell you information and guidelines on how to buy the Bitcoin and how to avoid unwanted attention when you buy the Bitcoin. Do not tell anyone that you're buying Bitcoin for the purpose or for the you want to pay the ransom. Just tell them that you want to invest, and here they stated that you can tell the Bitcoin broker that you're buying Bitcoin to participate in ICO and buy other cryptocurrencies to support Donald Trump to win the election. That's very hilarious. And next we have this routine. Now this code checks whether the keyboard layout is Russian. How do we know that? You can see here the function or the ransomware invokes the function get keyboard layout list. So by doing that, the ransomware will learn the possibilities of the geographic location of the victim. And next here we see this message, or we see this for loop. After retrieving the available layouts in the victim PC, it uses for loop to compare the values to a static value. The static value here is this value. This corresponds to the Russian layout, RU. This is the hexadecimal value. In ASCII, it corresponds to RU. So if the installed keyboard layout on the victim machine equals to RU, okay, the ransomware invokes an exit process. And here it invokes this function, message box, Russian keyboard found. Probably here it prints out a message stating that the detected keyboard layout is Russian. And therefore, the ransomware will exit and will not do any encryption. This means that the ransomware developers are trying to avoid any legal complications regarding victims who are based in the Russian Federation. This means that the malware developers, the LockBit, are Russian-based, or they are Russians. And now to the encryption routine. So this code is responsible for generating the encryption keys and encrypting the files. But how it works? I'm not going to go in depth on how this works because I'm not a cryptography expert. However, it can be clearly seen that the ransomware uses a combination of symmetric and asymmetric encryption. So the symmetric encryption is handled using the SHA-SHA-20 algorithm. And this algorithm is also used to generate the encryption key. So the encryption key is generated using the SHA-20 algorithm. Later down the road, we have the asymmetric encryption to generate a pair of public and private keys. And this is actually achieved through another algorithm. You can clearly see that the algorithm here is the curve 25519. This algorithm is used for asymmetric key exchange. So why the ransomware uses two methods of encryption: the curve 25519 and the SHA. So basically, we said earlier that SHA is used for the generation of the encryption key. However, the ransomware uses the curve 25519 to generate a key pair, the public and private key. They are used actually for every file being encrypted. For every file, the ransomware uses the public key pair or the key pairs generated by the curve 25519. And then these together, they are used with the newly generated private key, SHA. So with the key generated by SHA and the key pairs generated by the curve, every file is encrypted. And therefore, the process of generating or process of decrypting the files is rather complicated. You can need a decryptor that relies or that reverses the mechanism here. However, we do not need to code a decryptor because we can simply find the decryptor published by Bitdefender. It can be found here. So if you know someone who was infected with this ransomware, you can send this link. And this is the decryptor. It will decrypt the files encrypted by the ransomware. Now, let's talk about the dynamic analysis. So first, we're going to upload the sample to the VirusTotal here, provide the password. Now, luckily for us, the sample has been already flagged by antivirus security solutions, and you can see there's pretty much a lot of AVs that have flagged the sample. So you don't need to worry if you've got an antivirus installed on your system, and also Bitdefender works for flagging the sample. However, if you have been infected, you're going to have to download the decryptor. And remember, do not pay the ransomware under any circumstances. Next, we're going to jump to the dynamic analysis with ANY.RUN. Okay, so I'm going to upload the sample by clicking on a new analysis. And from here, I'm going to click on upload, select the sample. I'm going to start object from. So I'm going to start this from desktop, meaning I want to, if I ever wanted to access this from desktop, I would find it there. And command line, there is no command line I want to execute once the file is open, so I'm going to leave this as empty. Duration, we're going to put this as maybe 300 seconds to allow us enough time to play with the sample if we need to. As for the network, nothing needed. Now, as for the system, you can choose Windows 10 or Windows 11. Since most operating systems are using, or most people use Windows 11, can I click on Windows 11? I'm sorry for those who cannot upgrade to Windows 11 because their device is old. And we're going to see what are the applications we want to run alongside the sample, alongside the operating system. There is no requirement here, so I'm going to leave this as is. Additional settings, okay, run public analysis. So the runtime analysis has finished, and now we're going to start by analyzing the process tree. So our sample is this one. Now, the sample, when executed, it spawned several child processes, among which we have first this one. And we click on more info to have a look at the process. So first, the very first thing to see here is the verdict. The verdict is malicious, which means that ANY.RUN has successfully flagged the file as a malicious one. And it also flagged it as LockBit Ransomware. So it's already known to ANY.RUN what is the file type, what the family of ransomware it is. Now, if we check on the dangers, we can see the very first indication of a ransomware that it renames the target files into a new extension. So we click on this one, and we can find out the extension the ransomware uses for the new encrypted files. So that's the name of the original file. Okay, as you can see, it ends with search connector-ms. However, the new name is different. You can see now it ends with a totally different extension. It's .fns till the end of the extension. And we can see these patterns in several other files. This one is the ping and instead of ending with .url, it ends with the extension of the ransomware. Okay, so that's the first indication. Next, we have another detection mechanism here, which is YARA rules. So ANY.RUN has already a database of YARA rules, which can be used to flag samples or uploaded samples. So we have a YARA rule that detected the LockBit ransomware. And based on that, the sample has been determined to be a ransomware of LockBit type. And if we check the warnings, one of the warnings that are noteworthy is that the sample changes the desktop background image, which is a typical behavior in ransomware samples. It changes the desktop background to grab the attention of the victim that they have been infected. And we have the ransomware node, and then we have creates file in the system's drive root. This is telling us that the ransomware is creating a ransomware node in every directory that it encrypts. If we check the others, we can see that it checks the supported languages, and this is done by checking the keyboard layout, which we mentioned during the code analysis. And creates files. All of these behaviors we have actually checked during the code analysis. Now, if we go back to other processes spawned by the ransomware, now we have taken a look at the main process. If we check out this process, which is also a child process of the main ransomware, let's have a look at more info. And in total, we have around 5 detections. So in the other, it is just an environment check. In warnings, we have 2 warnings. First, we have reads the internet settings by checking this registry key. And then we have reads security settings of Internet Explorer. And we have this interesting command, *cmd for commands execution. If you have a look here, we check out the command. This is the command that the ransomware executes. Now, a closer look on this command, we see it is spawning first the command line interpreter with the option /c. /c indicates that the Windows operating system should execute command line followed by another command that comes after /c. The other command is this one, starts with delete. So it deletes using the option /f/q. /f for forceful deletion of the files. /q is a silent deletion without any prompts, meaning it's going to do a cleanup probably. This is a temporary file which may contain traces of evidence against the ransomware. So probably here, after the ransomware is done with the encryption, it's going to execute this command to perform a cleanup. So it is wrapping things up by clearing tracks. And here we have the verdict, LockBit 3 has been detected, and judging by the command. So this command probably is used by the LockBit family to perform a cleanup. And there is also a reference to the MITRE ATT&CK file deletion. File deletion is a MITRE ATT&CK tactic used by attackers to perform a cleanup and clean up traces. This is the same command. All right, now we have analyzed the process tree. It's time now to check the network activity, which is part of a dynamic analysis. Now, to make things short, if we take a look at the main process here, we start with this one. The PID or the process ID is 4840. So we're going to use the search bar here, okay, in ANY.RUN and type in the process ID to search for any requests that the ransomware might have actually created. So we see 0 HTTP requests, okay? Let's now check the connections. Also, we have 0 connections, checking out the DNS requests, and we have 0 DNS requests. And for the rest of the process IDs, I have found 0 connection to C2 servers, which means that the ransomware, initially, it doesn't communicate with any C2 server. It's similar to the silent ransomware we have analyzed in the recent video. It was the silent ransomware. It was the Mamuna ransomware. Now, this ransomware has something in common with the Mamuna ransomware in that it doesn't initially communicate. It doesn't communicate first because it's giving you a chance to pay the ransom. Now, once you do, if you do not pay the ransom, probably we don't see any evidence. Right now, I do not see any evidence that the ransomware communicates. So probably it's going to leave the files as is. Now, in the ransomware note, we saw that it claims that if you do not pay the ransom, the files will be published through these onion links. Now, honestly, I couldn't find any indication that the ransomware will or has a mechanism to communicate at least later. Maybe it has a timing mechanism where it actually uploads the files or the encrypted files to the C2 server, but we couldn't see this. Probably this will not be seen actually, because you should execute the ransomware in a real environment and monitor the connections. This is a virtualized environment, so probably because the ransomware is complicated, sophisticated, it doesn't execute all the underlying mechanisms if it detects that it is operating under a virtualized environment. For now, if you have analyzed the sample and you found any evidence of network activity, you can just maybe give your comments or insights in the comment section. But for now, that's all there is. Now you can click on the IOCs, and you can have a report of all the indicators of compromise found during the analysis session. Now, one cool thing in ANY.RUN is that you can analyze the sample using its hash. So I clicked on text report, and here I can see all the hashes. If you search with the SHA-256 in or through ANY.RUN's threat intelligence, you click on analysis, it shows you all the analysis sessions that match the hash. Okay, now basically this means that the sample has been analyzed extensively in the past, and we can see all the analysis sessions. You can also click on one of these analysis sessions to have a look at how the analysis came through. So here, the sample that was analyzed by someone, it is more than just LockBit. Okay, looks like it's a dropper that downloads multiple samples which are flagged under multiple malware families. So here we see Stealer, Luma, Agent Tesla, Async Chaos Ransomware, Cobalt Strike, and also we see LockBit. Also, it's keylogger, so it is a complicated sample. If we look at these, so this analysis session contains a sample that's only LockBit. Let's have a look at this one. Okay. All right, so this is it. Now, if you click on the main process, so it's similar to the process tree we have here. And here is the verdict. Something very similar to the results we have obtained. The findings are the same. Now, I am curious about the network activity part, because the ransomware here claims that it will upload the files to the onion links, Tor browser links blog, where the stolen information will be published. Okay, you should do this, or the ransomware is supposed to do this somehow by communicating with the C2 IP. Here, if we search with the main process ID, I don't see any network activity. If we search with the other one, child process 7568, still I cannot see any activity. And again, this is probably because this is a virtualized virtual machine. We're not going to run this on don't run this on a machine that is used for production. You may be uploading this sample to ANY.RUN if you want to analyze the sample dynamically and have a look at the indicators of compromise, or if you have a dedicated machine used for analysis, you can use that and have a look at the network connections if there is any. And lastly, I want to take a look at the MITRE ATT&CK tactics used by the sample. Here we can have all right, so here we have under privilege escalation, we have abuse elevation control mechanism. Under defense evasion, we have also the same one, which is known privilege escalation attack. Description says, adversaries might circumvent mechanisms designed to control elevate privileges. Okay. Discovery. Now we're going to rule out the others and the warnings, and we're going to keep dangers. Under impact, we have 18. Renames files like ransomware. So you're going to use these if you're writing a report about an incident that includes the discovery of LockBit ransomware. These information may be, or actually they are definitely beneficial for a report, because you need to write these IDs in your samples, tactics, techniques, and procedures. Now, if you want to check the warnings or the others, you can just rule out the danger by clicking over the danger and then click on warnings. It will bring up the warnings. So the warnings, we have two techniques, T1012, and under others, we have T1082. Lastly, let's have a look at the summary of the events. I'm going to click on graph. And here we have the process tree, but in a graph form. So first the sample is run, and it spawned this process. This process in turn spawned the LockBit process. After the execution is done, we have these two processes, one of which is the cleanup process that spawned the command line interpreter. Now, as to this process, let's go back and see this one. So this process is actually independent of the main process because it's not spawned by the main ransomware process. We have a warning or a danger about one node. Scans artifacts that could help determine the target. I'm going to ignore this for now because most importantly we have analyzed the main process or the main ransomware. And lastly, you can start your own analysis by signing up with ANY.RUN. So go to app.any.run, click on sign in, and then beside the sign in, you have the sign up, fill in your name, the business email, the password, and then start analyzing malware samples.